Hey people, good afternoon. This is Dante King, and this we are join. I'm joining you today from my home. Actually, I'm grateful to actually be home, and we are going to be having a discussion today um, about protecting Black children from anti-Blackness in America. Really, from the standpoint of understanding that we have a misplaced trust in American institutions. And so I'm going to put the actual flyer up that was shared about the event so that we can just have a brief overview before we go into it. So again, the title of today's event is Protecting Black Children from Anti-Blackness, Misdiagnoses, and Institutional Violence. We need to understand that we live within a societal and a cultural context that really figures Black people out of the human equation in terms of how we are regarded and how we're treated when we're having these experiences. And so we have a misplaced trust. We have a misplaced trust in every role or in every institution and in every role that is located within American institutions. So we trust teachers when we shouldn't. We trust doctors when we shouldn't. We trust police officers, lawyers. I was just at the, and I'll come back to this. I was just at the Fountain Blue in Las Vegas on Monday, and was there for a massage. I was actually going to the spa, and I've been there before. I've gone there a number of times. People there know me, so to speak. And I was approached by security for my ID. Now, if I had not been a regular customer in that establishment, I wouldn't have felt the way that I did. But I had a heightened level of anger, of anger and rage, because I could not believe. I mean, and even the way that they approached me, they didn't say hi, hello, is everything okay? From the initial engagement, it was, are you a guest here? And when I responded no, and I couldn't even get out, why I was there, I responded no. And the next request from the security people was, um, can I see your ID? We need to see your ID. No, you don't. No, you don't at all. And so it does not matter how many degrees you have, how much money you have, how respectful you are. Being Black is a brand, and it's a brand of it like sets off this sensor for people to degrade you or to be able to degrade us. Anyway, I'm talking a lot. Joining me today in today's discussion will be several people that I respect tremendously. The first person I'll bring to the stage is my sister, Shauna Lewis, who is just an amazing Black woman with a very tender and sensitive, yet candid and powerful and strong perspective. So I'm going to add my sister to the stage and have her come on and just share her thoughts and perspectives about either the larger context of this work and or today's discussion. So welcome Shauna Lewis to the stage, y'all.
Hey, how are you today, brother?
Hey sis, I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. A bit tired because it's been a pretty hectic few weeks for me. As you know, I was at the White Privilege Conference last week. I had to do a keynote and then several sessions for that conference. And then prior to that, I was at the a wellness summit in Palm Springs. I had to speak there 2 Saturdays ago. So I've been traveling and my body is a bit tired. Other than that, I'm great. How are you?
I'm well. I'm doing well. I have been feasting on the book. It's brilliant, and anyone who has not added it to their collection should go and grab it right away. And they should begin, if they haven't already, to be enriched by the fruit of your study, your labor, and your sacrifice, and liberating us, all who have been living in this system, which is all of us, and understanding racism through the proper lens, the lens that I have adopted, which is whiteness and anti-Blackness, as psychosis, collective psychosis, and that there's help and there's hope. But the basic misunderstanding, I found myself right in that spot. So I've just been really enjoying the work. Personally, doing well, husband's well, boys are good. Professionally, as an equity practitioner, I've been listening and hearing all the things that are going on, practicing very deep self care, taking good care of myself and my staff, but continuing to move the needle forward because there is no hierarchy of humanity. All people matter. But I am unapologetically a champion for Black people, and underrepresented groups such as women and other people of color. So that's how I'm doing. Glad to be here and excited to share the stage with you today.
But that is wonderful to hear. And I appreciate you amplifying that point of what we're really talking about here, especially when even, when we have these discussions, is the reality that people's humanity has been prioritized above other people's humanity based on skin color in this country. And so we have a cultural and a societal context where we don't, white people don't value anyone who they do not consider white, and or they don't value them as much as they value themselves, but they have been responsible, and they have facilitated really the dissemination of that training and that programming, where people who are considered non-white, though they may have a proximity to white, are just they sit just there in that location of having a proximity to whiteness, either by, and I talk about this in my book, the texturism of their hair, their phenotype, which we typically refer to as colorism, featureism, meaning, their features. And so all of those things are a part of what I refer to as the desirability value system in America. Phenotype and color, the way that it is, the compulsory nature of it and how it functions in our culture. It is the main value system. It's the main. Whiteness became the value system once colonialist white folk decided that they would create the United States of America and base citizenship on whiteness. So we have to very much understand that. We also have to go deeper in our understanding around how anti-Blackness functions, not just within white people, but in Asian people, in Hispanic people, in the Latinx community, people who consider themselves Latinx, and in the Black community. It functions across all. And what we're talking about is the psychology that we have been programmed with, that constitutes that Black people are the ultimate racial other, that they are, every derogatory context you can think about. That is what has been programmed into people's psyches about Black people. And that's even true when it comes to Black people. And I wanted to have this discussion today because the way that what we're talking about fits into this equation and situation that we find ourselves in is profound. And I believe as we go on today, as people are watching and listening, they will begin to understand exactly where we're coming from and some of the points that are being made. Before we go on, though, I want to introduce and add to the stage another one of our dear sisters, Jessica Brown. Jessica Brown is a phenomenal Black woman. She's the mother children as well, along just like my sister Shauna, who's on here. And so this event came about because of a personal situation that Jessica experienced with one of her children. And so I was angry. I became angry and very vengeful and rageful. And so, what other way to direct my energy but host an event to be able to talk about it, right, and air it out? Because how many of you understand? How many of you know? And I want to give some place to this. Sometimes people go out and they don't know how to. Um, what's the word? Disseminate or act upon or act out their anger and rage in ways like this that are constructive. Sometimes they go out and they go postal, right? So in order for me not to do that, I try to write books. I try to have events like this where we're able to talk because it is angering, and we have to be able to get that anger and rage out of our system, out of our bodies, because it's toxic. So I want to bring to the stage my dear good sister Jessica Brown. Everyone, give her a round of applause. Let's please welcome her.
Hi, hello. Hi. Excuse, but you see, I have kids. They just got my eyes looking
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, Jess, it's great to see you. You look wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You and Shauna, Shauna, I just adore you. So I'm happy to be in this with you.
Love you, girl.
Yes.
Did you want to say anything, Jess, before we get started?
Yeah, so I'll give just a kind of overview of this. I have a 2-year-old son. We had been just in conversations with his physician about his development. The physician felt like Riyadh, his name is Riyadh, my son was not speaking enough, right, for his age group. So we went through a journey. It's been almost about a year and some change, a journey of getting him assessed, getting him into speech therapists, getting him assessed for speech therapy, and questioning on whether or not he has autism. So it's been a traumatic experience for me, and I'll definitely go into it more with Dante. But that's basically the overall gist of it: is me having to challenge these systems who are very quick to prematurely diagnose our children with something and have these unrealistic and even made up standards of milestones. And it's been a learning journey for me on understanding my own child and also trusting my abilities as a mother. That's been the biggest thing for me. But this has been a year and some change journey now that I've been on trying to fight and advocate for my son.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jess. And every time we talk about what happened, it's just a gut punch.
Yeah.
It really is, because let's put this into context. Jessica mentioned it, but we're talking about a 2-year-old child,
right,
who has not developed in any substantial way, right? And there has not even been enough time to elapse in order to allow that to happen. And yet, in this society that is rooted in not just anti-Blackness, but also a type of inhumanity where you really don't deal with the person as a unique individual, you are judging them based on standards and norms that society has defined. This is how they should be functioning at this age. This is how they should be talking or speaking or showing up. And so you are forced to then not deal with the uniqueness of your child or children, but to ensure that they're meeting a standard or criteria. So this set of 2-year-olds are functioning this way, and this one should function just like them. We're talking about a 2-year-old child, everyone. This is huge. And so the other inhumane aspect of this, and Sean, I want to bring you in, is the doctor who does not know the child at all, has not spent any substantial amount of time with the child as an individual to understand their habits, to understand their moods, to understand their likes and dislikes. Nothing. Has an appointment with the 2-year-old child, and based on their 15-minute impression, that is not even, I mean, we can't even count it as a minuscule part or component of the child's life experience. 2 years, you spend 15, 20 minutes, and you're already coming up with a label and a diagnosis based on a framework and a model that defines people through Eurocentric standards, norms, expectations, etc. How many of you understand just how dangerous this all is? Just the point that I just made. So, Shauna, your thoughts?
The uniqueness of our children. Thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing. I first just want to love on you. I'm a mother who also has my youngest son. I have three sons, 22, 14, and 12. And the youngest one has an acquired brain injury that he sustained at 12 months. And so I've dealt with the trauma of having to live in the hospital with a very, very rare diagnosis, and have had to go through the journey of physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. And we had his IEP yesterday. But one of the things that is interesting to me, and I think that we have to really address, is when we start talking about these social norms that we have living in a society, is around the programming of trust in leaders within primarily or predominantly white institutions, yet how we're conditioned to trust their titles. But on the flip side, we experience hyper scrutiny in return. And so, you know, the trust, if my doctor is saying this, it must be true. My doctor has gone to school. My doctor is the expert, but I live with this baby every day. And like you said, Jessica, I have to trust my instinct as a mom. My instinct, I am a woman of faith, and I believe that God gave me this baby and what I need to train them up and raise them. And while I may have some concerns, give me the courtesy of a full assessment conversation before we get into that deficit mindset that we're subjected to as Black people in this country. White mediocrity is rarely, if ever, questioned or scrutinized, but Black excellence is always scrutinized, right? And so one of the things that as I wrap up my comment, one of the things that bothers me a lot is that deficit model. There must be something wrong. Yes, there may be some standards and some norms, but maybe my baby is unique, and maybe my baby is in that category of outlier behaviors where the communication will be more robust down the road. Let's not start talking about, and no disrespect to our community members that are part of the autism community and on the spectrum community, but the deficit-based model, approaching that out the gate, is, I believe, another one of the barriers that we experience being Black in this country.
Absolutely so. Jessica, you want to say anything?
Well, I could cry, right? And I might cry. Ooh. And I love what you said, because I'm in no way trying to disregard those that truly have autism. Truly, parents have had to fight. I have friends who have had to fight for resources because they didn't believe, the provider didn't believe them, right? But those friends, their child had time, right? My son is 2 years old, and I am emotional right now because, as you said, Shauna, I was going down that path. I trusted this provider. I had a traumatic experience with delivering my son. He almost died. This pediatrician came in, got him right, got him together. So I'm saying, oh, this pediatrician has the best interest, because she came in guns a-blazing to help my son survive. So when she first brought it to my attention, I said, okay, I will go down this path. I had 4 visits. We tested his hearing, we tested his speech, we tested his initial physical assessment, and then we did a pediatric developmental appointment. And I was on board until we got to the pediatric developmental appointment. The pediatrician, again, as Dante said, came in with a mask on. The appointment was an hour. My son doesn't know who she is. He's tired, he's hungry, he's ready to go. She gives him bubbles to play with. He loves bubbles. So he's playing with the bubbles. She then gives him another toy, and his attention goes to this other toy. She tried to say to me, well, he's not holding the attention of the bubbles. So we're going to go, so maybe that's a sign. And I had to question, what 2-year-old do you know has their one attention on one object when you're presenting to them another object that they want, right? So it just started to go down. They seem to be trying to give him red flags for basic things that 2-year-olds do. The next visit, which was initiated by his father, because after we stopped that, I said, I'm good. We're going to give him some more time to develop. I'm not going to go down this route. His father did not feel the same way, so we went down another route. Had an appointment with the speech therapist, again, the same one. And my son waved his hand at her. She marked that as a red flag for him waving his hand one time, saying hi to her. Then she tried to accuse him of being aggressive towards her. So she gave him a toy.
A 2-year-old.
2-year-old. She tried to take the toy away. A 2-year-old got upset, which he does. She thought he was going to throw the toy at her. So this is the only time me and his father aligned when we were saying that's not his personality. He wasn't going to throw a toy at you. He's not aggressive. She was happy too. She's like, I knew he was going to throw the toy at me. I said, no, he wasn't, girl. So it just really questioned, like, how are they doing these things? And again, not taken away from the parents that have had to actually get their children support, because I do believe that is also real. And I want to say that the way that, in my experience, that they were trying to pathologize Riyadh for very
absolutely
2-year-old behavior is extremely concerning to me.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous, and his life, the entire rest of his life is on the line based on what is documented in his medical records. And so what you are bringing to light, which I so appreciate. I mean, I'm upset about it, but I'm so considerably appreciative of what you are highlighting, because what you're amplifying are the methods, right? This is what you are centering in this discussion, is that you have people trying to frame very ordinary behaviors as a part of their methodology to then create a justification to label your baby for the rest of his life. And so what this centers is that anyone at any time in a role that this society has deemed a legitimate role, or they are an official of some sort, they can use any method. They can use any method at any time to try and paint this picture that your baby, that your child, even you, don't measure up, that you are inadequate, that there is a deficiency, and that there is something wrong with you. What you highlighted, and I'm going to go back to the bubbles and the wave, right? She gave the child the bubbles. He's fascinated. Wonderful. She brings along another toy, and he turns his attention to that toy. So all of a sudden now, we're going to create the narrative in a very pernicious and insidious manner. We're going to create the narrative that there's something wrong with this child because he can't concentrate. He's got an attention deficit at 2. And see, here's the danger. Have you been someone who does not have resources, who doesn't have a type of political agency, because you are employed, you're gainfully employed, you're what would be considered middle class, so to speak? But let's say you were someone without a sort of agency, right? A personal agency, a political agency. They could strong arm you into making sure that you go right along with them. And your baby is at 2 years old, and now he's diagnosed with autism. He's diagnosed with an attention deficit, and this baby knows none the wiser. And now he's 10, and people are relating to him based on these labels. It shapes your whole life. And the reason this was so important to me is because the same thing happened to me and to my mother back in the 1970s, early 80s. They had her attempting to put me on Ritalin, and she gave me one dose and was like, no more, right? But this, so I'm going to get into more of this, but any thoughts before I go on?
Yeah, sorry, Sean.
No, go ahead, Jess.
And when you're a mother, a parent, if you're a parent and you're by yourself, you're coming from the mindset is if I want my child to survive this white supremacy culture. So I need to do whatever I got to do. And sometimes that is by default, as you said, Shauna, trusting these systems. And I will tell you, I laid into all of them. I asked them so many questions that they could not answer. And that was, as Dante said, that was scary to me. Because if you all are the professionals saying that this is happening and you can't answer simple questions like what are the benchmarks? What are the disparities that you all are failing Black children? How do you bring in cultural competency? What type of training have you had on anti-Blackness and racism, like dismantling that? Once you start going into the questions and asking them to explain their process, they can't do it. That is extremely dangerous. We are paying these people, we are entrusting in these people to help us with our children, and they can't even tell you what type of tools they're using and how those tools are generated. And so I just encourage all the parents out there to please start questioning these systems, from the education to the health because they have established benchmarks and baseline priorities and assessments that are not about helping our children. They're about meeting their financial bottom line. They get
absolutely
for diagnosing certain amount of children, certain amount of adults with certain things each year from the federal government. And this was their attempt to get money off of my child without, as you said, Shauna, doing a thorough assessment to make sure that this was really what it is. You know?
And so to that point, it's important to talk about the politics and the economics of white supremacy. America is a business. And so these institutions are economic factories. And everyone from the schools, the school districts, the teachers, and the classrooms, they have quotas. They have quotas. They have to make sure a certain number of students fill those seats in order for them to get funding. And if certain schools have special ed programs, in a white supremacist culture, they've incentivized children that they consider special ed because they want more children to go into being considered special ed, and particularly non-white children. Non-white children. So it's the same at the doctor's office. The doctor has a certain number of medical patients that they need to see every day. It does not matter. Those appointments need to be scheduled, and you need to ensure that you retain those appointments so that you can prove your effectiveness and efficiency inside this institution. And so it is no different when we talk about behavioral health doctors who sometimes are medical doctors as well, but we're talking about psychiatrists, licensed clinical social workers, and psychologists who have quotas to be able to diagnose people. And it does not matter if they are 2, if they are 4, if they are 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever. They have quotas, and all of this fits into the economy, the economics of white supremacy, the economics of white America. Shauna.
I want to highlight your parental vigilance, the importance of parental vigilance. And because we're having this conversation and because people are coming into awareness, my greatest hope is that our audiences will come away from our conversation today learning how, because you may not already be an advocate. Some of us are taught, some stuff is taught and some stuff is caught. But my greatest hope is that our parents will learn how to advocate, because if you haven't had a voice in other areas of your life, it may be difficult for you to find your voice in this season, especially depending on the experts that you're around. Cultural competence, when we talk about the removal of diversity, equity, and inclusion, this type of stuff is the reason why. What bias mitigation training has the healthcare professional undergone? Because I have to check my bias. as a Black woman. I've been conditioned to, if I see somebody that meets, the status quo, that I should be concerned, clutch my purse and stand over to the side. I'm not exempt from that. None of us are. If you're a human, you have biases. So I want to know what's going on. The criminalization about him allegedly going to throw a block. Our little boys, I have an adult son and two that are on their way. There are times where my 22-year-old son was not allowed to be a little boy, where other kids, they were just being kids, but my son was being a problem and was being violent and was being intentional, going back to the criminalization of our children. But above that, again, I just want to highlight the necessity for parental vigilance at every stage. Now that we're aware, you can't be unaware. I told my brother all the time, the law of exposure said once you've been exposed, you can't be unexposed. So we all have to come away from this conversation, those that are listening, to understand that we need to ask more questions. We need to be comfortable with asking more questions. We need to be comfortable with saying, slow down, like you said, Jessica, give him more time. For my youngest son, there were assessments that they would not give him because they were trying to determine, based on his acquired brain injury, what is his condition as it relates to school. And we landed on specific learning disability. That's a broad range, but there were certain assessments because I knew something was going on with my son. I knew something was going on. I knew what he had experienced, but they said, Shauna, there's certain tests and there's certain evaluations that we don't give them until they get to kindergarten, until they get there, because we want to give them time to develop, time to grow, time for you to assess them, and time for us to get a greater understanding of what this child's abilities are, not from a deficit model. So I was grateful that we're talking about the barriers, but there are also some school districts and some healthcare professionals that do understand and that are culturally competent and are sensitive that there are some behaviors that you need to wait in order to assess. But that parental vigilance, that ability to be patient, to take your time and to give your baby time, is going to be key for us. And the willingness and the courage to speak up and to ask questions every single time.
Well, and I want to share this principle because, and I wanted to share it before we got started, but we kind of have just engaged in a way that's very organic, which I love because y'all know me, I am not scripted when it comes to really life, period. But I want to set a particular context, and I think this will help because when I hear, for example, the suggestion that parents need to advocate better, that sounds so simple, right? Like it's kind of a basic thing to do. But the piece that can be missed is that, and we have to go back to this. I truly believe most parents, I kind of want to say all, but not all, but most, are really doing their best to love their children and to be the best parents that they can for their children. I believe that wholeheartedly. I was blessed with a wonderful mother and a family that just really loved on me and supported me. However, right, and I know my mom had my best interest at heart, but when you are indoctrinated and socialized in a culture, in a particular society, right, to believe a certain way, to act a certain way, that does not change. That cannot change. And so we have been forced to accept a cultural ideology, a cultural environment, a set of standards, norms, and beliefs that are not ours. This has been thrust upon us, rather, by a dominant group of people who have designed a society where we are hated. And that's the simplest way to put it. And so I want to share, this is from which page? Page 15 in my book, okay? And so I'm gonna share it on the screen. And I'm gonna read to all of you verbatim, just kind of what's written here. In my definition of anti-Blackness, right? So I write that anti-Blackness is a white American legal, social, cultural, economic, and belief system. It thrives on the deprioritization of humans perceived as Black. It also includes the criminalization, hypernegativity, hyperscrutiny, and pessimistic positioning of Black people and or Blackness throughout all aspects of American life for the purpose of justifying political debasement, social debasement, cultural debasement, and economic debasement, and all other inhumane treatment, ultimately genocide. Right. And so, in understanding this definition of anti-Blackness, we have to understand that though it is a white American construct, it's a white American psychology, right? It's a belief system that this psychology being trained into the American cultural context, where all of us have been trained and programmed to be anti-Black. What this means is that we are set up to act in bad faith where Black people are concerned. And so it is important to then understand that when you take your child to school, and your child is a Black child with a Black mother and a Black father, the people in that room, whether it's the IEP or a special person that's helping the teacher, or the teacher themselves or the faculty, that they are entering into the relationship with your child with a degree of unbelief. And if your child happens to do well by meeting and or exceeding their expectations, they're going to be so joyful in glee because they're going to consider your child to be somewhat of an exception or special. And they get excited, right? But that is rooted in the psychology of anti-Blackness, because their reason for becoming excited or joyful or gleeful that your child is doing well is rooted in the reality that they didn't expect them to do well when they walk through those doors. Because the psychology of anti-Blackness says that this child is not capable. This child is not competent. This child is not smart. This child is a problem, right? And let's be clear, our falling in line and us having to get in line and demonstrate, that we are smart, that we are civil, that we are respectful and respectable people, that is rooted too within the psychology and within the context of white supremacy and abiding by white standards, white norms, and so on and so forth. So we have to understand, and I'm going to go back to my original point, is that everyone in this society is acting and has been programmed to act in bad faith where Black people are concerned. So the doctor, when she entered into the room and saw little Black 2-year-old Riyadh versus little white 2-year-old Tommy, where she's operating off of a belief that this white child is phenomenal, this white child has potential. It's unrealized potential. So we're not talking about fact. We're talking about the belief, the psychology of belief, the ideological infrastructure, the psychological ideological infrastructure that we have, that we are hardwired with, that says, I believe in this person's ability. And that inspires me to invest my time, to invest my resources, to invest my effort. But if I don't believe that this other child, this Black child or Black adult, does not measure up or does not have what it takes, does not possess what it takes to measure up, I'm not inspired to invest the same amount of effort, attention. The belief is not there. So we have to understand that the belief system of white supremacy and the belief system of anti-Blackness inspires different approaches across the board. And that is what we experience and face every day as Black people in white America.
Facts.
Thoughts?
I mean, absolutely. And the way that they've been able to also shape what we consider is normal, right?
That's right.
That even for myself, and I see someone in the comments put something like that, I had to deprogram myself into saying what is normal, right? That's why I was asking the questions. Give me the benchmark. Who are you comparing? How he should be developing? Because what standards of normalcy are you basing this on? And to Shauna, to your point, what happens a lot, particularly with Black boys, and I think I am seeing it with Black girls as well, we rob them of their ability to enjoy their childhood. Because now we're implementing this normalcy standard of how they should be, without allowing them to develop and be their full authentic selves. And I had to tell myself that there is nothing wrong with my child. He is absolutely fine. And for me to also too, I had to, you know, and you're right, Dante, we all have been socialized into this. And if I did not have you, if I hadn't been doing my own work on dismantling anti-Blackness, I would have felt right in line with what they said. And then maybe eventually down the line got to the point of being like, no, but I would have put my child through some trauma before getting there. And like you said, Dante, we all are doing the best that we can with what we got. And, you know, this is where I think we as a community have to show up and support each other better, because this is a very isolating journey for me. I don't, if it was not for me having Dante to consult with and us talking about these things from the behavioral health perspective, I would have been completely alone in this advocacy for my son. I would have been, I have already been questioned about it. I've already questioned myself about, am I being a good parent? Am I being in denial about his development? I mean, I went through a lot of, as you said, Dante, and I'm glad you said this, it's not as easy to advocate for your child. There was a lot of mental exhaustion that happened with me in even getting to there, even the courage, right? Because now I'm challenging these white providers. Are they going to call CPS on me? Are they going to think that I'm not a good parent? You know, I had to go through all of that, and as well as me doing it by myself, because unfortunately, me and the other parent have a different understanding of these things, right? And so I'm not in community with a person to be able to challenge this together. And even if I was, there still would be this, right? Because like, as you said, Dante, even when we are together as Black parents, we're still up against a white supremacy system that is
Right.
always see us as deficit based, right? But it just has been empowering for me to have community where I have examples of mothers who have believed in letting their child develop, right? Who are not with the notion of Black excellence, right? They've allowed me to see how they parent and what they've done to really invest into knowing their children. So that way, all these institutions cannot tell you about your children, because again, they're only spending 15 minutes with them and they already have a dangerous impression of your child. It really built my capacity to say, no, you know your children. You know, you are with them every day. You know what they're capable of, what they're doing, and how they're developing. Do not let these people scare you into thinking something different, you know.
That's right. And so what you're speaking to, and I wanted to play this short video. So I'll put this up here for all of us to just watch. It's a quick clip of the conversation between James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni, and it's they're having this discussion in the 70s, in the mid 70s. So let's watch and listen together, and then Sean, I'd love for you to respond in terms of what these folks, these beautiful and brilliant folks, are saying during this clip. So let me just see if I can. Okay. I think this will be good. I'll share this and then I'll switch to the screen. Okay, here we go. Can you hear that? Oh no. Hold on, let me start over. Let me go again. I kind of figured because it wasn't showing up, but it's okay. All right, here we go. Will this allow me? It may not. Okay, that's what's going on. For some reason, it's not allowing me, but it's okay. Let me try it another way. Here we go.
And everybody's put us now what I was trying for myself, after all, first of all, to elucidate for myself a theology and the effects of a theology, which I, at that moment, realized I carried in myself. Mm-hmm. You know, it was not the world that was my oppressor only. Because what the world does to you, if the world does it to you long enough and effectively enough, you begin to do it to yourself. Mm-hmm. You become a collaborator an accomplice of your own murderers, because you believe the same things they do. No, they think it's important to be white, and you think it's important to be white. They think it is shameful to be black, and you think it is shameful to be black. And you have no corroboration around you of any other sense of life. All those corroborations which are around you are, in terms of the white majority standards, so deplorable, they frighten you to death. You don't eat watermelon.
Okay. So it's so interesting, right? Because I hear Baldwin, and one of the things that comes to mind for me, and Jessica, you've heard me say this before, is we have thousands of languages that exist upon this planet across various continents. Thousands of languages. And yet, as Black people, the only reality that we know guides us to judge ourselves and our children's proficiency by one language. You become a collaborator. Forced assimilation. Through the process of forced assimilation, you become a collaborator with your own murderers. Shauna.
Facts, big facts. And it's crazy that you brought up language. In my organization, I am leading our language access initiative, and it has been a heavy lift. But I am so very grateful that where I live, my county has prioritized language access for all. LA County is home to 10 million folks, and over 200 languages, that we're aware of that are spoken here. And so when you work in the public sector, the communities in our care deserve to be able to communicate with us no matter what door they touch. And so I do agree that you sit in something long enough, you become immune to it. You smell something long enough, you become nose blind to it. You can't smell it anymore. And I think that's why your book, your work, you creating community opportunities like this for folks to come together and to be enlightened and liberated. There's a liberation that needs to happen because you don't know what you don't know. But back to the law of exposure, once you've been exposed, you can't be unexposed. And so these conversations help us to begin to think differently and to question, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why am I censoring myself? I got an offer to go work in a predominantly white county, and I knew that I couldn't take the job because I can't code switch that long. I just know. I'm gonna say ain't. I'm gonna say finna. I got more degrees than a thermometer, colonial credentials, but I still have to be myself. I am who I am, and I am from Linwood, Compton, unapologetically. But I can sit in the boardroom and be in the hood. It don't matter. I am me. But society has taught me that there's some parts of me that I should hide. And there's some angles of my lifestyle and my linguistic selection that I should put to the side because of how it may make those around me feel when I don't speak the King's English. And so I have to be mindful, and I'm constantly dismantling as well, Jessica, and correcting and checking myself. It's no problem with you showing up and being who you are and speaking how you want to speak. They're going to talk about you. They're going to make you, they already think you're inferior. So go ahead and be yourself.
That's right. And so the ideological and psychological frameworks of anti-Blackness really guide the ways that we have been assaulted, that we really have been assaulted and afflicted or inflicted with a toxicity and a poison that tells us that we are not good enough, that we are inadequate, that we don't measure up, that we always have to be attempting to measure up to meet the white normative standards of behavior, of language, the way that we think, how we dress. And if we don't measure up, we are somehow inadequate or deficient. The problem, though, is that it's not only internalized. It's not only internalized oppression, it is weaponized oppression as well, because you use those same standards and norms to judge your children's behavior, the way that they speak, the way that they should be acting in any moment, and you use societal standards, white societal standards and principles. And the reason that I frame this way for any one of you who may be new to following my work, but we've never known a reality without the influence of white domination and white rulership. So every standard, every norm, the language that we speak has been handed to us by white people. And so we must then understand that we are using or redirecting this internalized toxicity that they've inflicted upon us to everyone else in our community. We're judging them by white societal standards and norms. And so they can never be good enough. They will never be good enough. Do you want to know why? Because the psychology of anti-Blackness has programmed us to never see Black people as being able to measure up or be good enough, even when we are perfect, even when we are above average. But it also functions in a way where the truth about white mediocrity and white inadequacy is never revealed or truly focused upon, or I would say until you get a predator, someone that's been convicted on 34 felonies who ascends to the presidency. I mean, we can see it now because it's front and center for us with Donald Trump. But this is every day. This is what American institutions are filled with. Incapable, inadequate white people who steal other people's ideas all the time. They'll sit in rooms with you. Dante, what do you think? Shauna, what do you think? Jessica, what do you think? It is the continuation of exploitation because of a deficiency and inadequacy on their own part. Now, am I saying that white people are the most inadequate people? I can't say that. I cannot make that determination. I can say that in my life, throughout my school experience, my school career, my professional career, I have witnessed over and over and over and over and over again, white people not being just given passes, but being able to make extraordinary mistakes that I would never be able to recover from, that other people would never be able to recover from. I highlighted, and I've highlighted before, especially in trainings that I give, I had a boss who recently left the city and county of San Francisco. You can look this up. It's in the San Francisco Chronicle. So if you look up Jeffrey Tumlin in the San Francisco Chronicle, and you go back to 2020 or 2019, this white man is going on record. He used to be my boss, right? But he gets the job as the transportation director of San Francisco. He's running the entire 6,000 plus person agency. And he goes on record in this article and says, I've never run a transit agency before. I've never overseen major construction projects. So he admitted on the record, he wasn't qualified to do the job. He never had garnered the experience that would have set him up to be able to do that job. And yet he was still handed the job, because that is the value of being white. You can be not just mediocre, you can be inadequate. And so we must understand and center this hyper scrutiny that is always turned in the direction of non-white people and most severely Black people, that sets us up to be hypercritical, hyper scrutinizing of ourselves, of our children, of every such other person in our families. It sets us up to be that way. And so I want to play a few different commentaries by some people that I value and respect. I'm going to prep it, but Shauna, as I'm prepping this, I'd love for you to speak to what I just shared, and you too, Jessica.
Always attempting to fit in. We feel it. I love the fact that you verbalized it.
That's the inclusion. Huh? That's the inclusion and belonging framework, isn't it?
Yes. It lives right beneath the surface. And so and I said it before, there's always an internal censoring to make sure that I'm presenting, that I'm showing up, that my work, excellence is my standard. And my standard is excellence. That's just who I am as a person. However, I'm always wondering when I'm in a professional space, am I being viewed as good enough? But I don't ever say it, but it lies right there. And again, like you stated, you can be completely inadequate. I have the opportunity in my role to prepare people to sit on interview panels. And it is extremely important to me. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, because some of the conversations that I've had with people that have gone through the training that I give reveals to me that there are a lot of organizations that do not prepare people. And there are folks that are going in there for their dream job that they've been working for and preparing for, and they're sitting before a panel, possibly a panel of people who are not prepared to give them a fair shot. I think from an economic and wealth building standpoint, that is one area where organizations, if I were, to talk to people, leaders in organizations, where they really need to make significant investments. Because if we're going to build wealth, you got to at least get the opportunity. But I can't get the opportunity if I can't get past the interview panel. I might have showed up and did everything right, but because the person I sat before had the mindset that I was inferior before I opened my mouth, that I was inferior the moment they read my name and it sounded Black. You saw Tyrone instead of Tommy, and you automatically thought that Tyrone wasn't fit, regardless of my qualifications. And so I think that ability for someone who, is inadequate or just mediocre, but is white presenting or has close proximity to whiteness, has a greater opportunity than Tyrone, who is well educated and well prepared with experiences and the ability to do the job in excellence, not even given an opportunity. And I think that we need to take that into consideration, and the impact that it has on us from an economic standpoint. Maybe I just got to now go take a job instead of being in the career paying me what I deserve for my education and my experience. And what does that do to my children? How does that prevent them from being able to build and sustain wealth in this country, in this system that we're all being subjected to?
Absolutely. Jessica, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think to that too, Shauna, and it brings me back to the video a little bit of the anti-Blackness that has been socialized into us. So even if we're in higher leadership positions, we are seeing Black people as inferior. And
Jessica,
yeah.
I'm going to bring this example in really quickly, because what you just hit on, Shauna, Jessica, do you remember, this is probably maybe a year ago now, maybe even a little bit over, but there were some Black students that were taken out of a classroom in Florida and told that they would end up in jail or that they would end up dead if they didn't do well on the standardized tests.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? You can Google it. It happened to a group of school-aged children. It was all over the news. It was nationwide news. What didn't get highlighted is that they were taken out of that room and told that by Black educators. There were Black educators in the room. I'm not sure if all of them were Black, but some of them were Black, and maybe all of them were Black, that spoke that to those children and told them that they would buy them McDonald's if they did well on the test. Yep. And those children went home crying. So Jessica, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's right on target with what James Baldwin was saying. The white people don't have to do this to us anymore. They have programmed and socialized us to be so anti-Black. We do it to each other. So even in my example as me, I'm so thankful I did not go to that route because I was looking at my son differently. And I know a lot of parents, when we are challenged with our children's behavior by someone else, we start now treating them in that deficit base. We now start antagonizing them because they're not meeting this quote unquote white supremacy standard that we've all been brainwashed into participating in. So, I think with the video with James Baldwin, what struck out to me is most, I think also your example, Shauna, is we do this to each other, because I've sat on interview panels where I have seen other Black people tear down Black people, and this person could be highly educated, have those colonial degrees that you're saying, ranked number 1 on the exam, and there is a Black person on the panel who was saying, nope, they're not good enough. I sat on one where
can I just clarify real quick, Jess?
Yeah.
Because everyone heard Jessica say that we inflict anti-Blackness upon each other as Black people. I just want to add one word, two. because it's not only us as Black people doing it. And I know that that's not what Jessica means, but I want to clarify, we are participators in this whole behavioral and psychic construct of anti-Blackness. And so we're inflicting it upon Black people too.
Yeah.
It's coming from white people. It's coming from Asian people in this environment. It's coming from Hispanic people, Middle Easterners, Latinx people. It's coming from Black people too. So we have to understand that just because there's representation in the room does not mean that there is solidarity or protection.
Right.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Well, yeah, and to that too, it often comes from the ones who have participated in the colonial degrees, right? We think ourselves with seeking white validation, and then we think that we are now the gatekeepers, the overseers of Black people. And so then we start administering that same harm that we are getting from everybody else onto each other. I just want to give an example real quick. I was on an interview panel and I had it was for a high-level director position, and I recall this white woman coming in saying, I ain't got it, y'all. I'm here, but I don't really know if I can do this job. Like, I'm here, right? And we compared her results to another candidate who happened to be Black. And one of the panelists at the time said that they liked the white woman. They thought the white woman can do the job, despite her coming in saying, I ain't got it. I'm probably not qualified for this position. The Black person on the panel still heard that as this person is qualified, but then questioned the Black person. So yeah, we can participate as well.
We absolutely do.
And it causes harm, as in, I know you might show more of that video, but in that discussion with Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin, it talks about that, especially when it comes to our close relationships.
Let's not go there just yet, because that'll be.
Can I respond really fast, brother?
Can I put something up here, Shauna, just real quickly?
Sure.
Because I want to give a resource to what Jessica's talking about, but also I'm talking about it as well in my book. And so I just want to give, this is another passage from pages 268 and 269 in my book, where I reference Dr. E. Franklin Fraser's work around the Black bourgeoisie. And so I write, white supremacies and anti-Blacknesses impacts on Black adults in today's society, as sociologist E. Franklin Fraser warned in his 1957 text entitled Black Bourgeoisie, often involves an adaptation to whiteness in all its misery. Dr. Franklin asserted that middle and upper class Black persons' attempts to become like white people are the result of the anti-Blackness they have internalized, resulting in an inferiority complex. He said, since the Black bourgeoisie live largely in a world of make-believe, the masks which they wear to play their sorry roles conceal the feelings of inferiority and the insecurity and the frustrations that haunt their inner lives. Despite their attempt to escape from real identification with the masses of Negroes, they cannot escape the mark of oppression any more than their less favored kinsmen. In attempting to escape identification with the Black masses, they have developed a self-hatred that reveals itself in their deprecation of the physical and social characteristics of Negroes. Likewise, their feelings of inferiority and insecurity are revealed in their pathological struggle for status within the isolated Negro world and craving for recognition in the white world. Their escape into a world of make-believe with its sham society leaves them with a feeling of emptiness and futility, which causes them to constantly seek and escape in new delusions. And so whether that delusion is accepting misguided behavioral diagnoses because you have suffered a tremendous amount of trauma and now you're seeking help, and so your only outlet or thought process is to then go and seek help, and then someone takes advantage of you seeking help and decides to label you, and now you're like, oh, that helps me to understand what's wrong with me. Now I've got a label. I can understand what to call myself. No, do not do that to yourself. You suffer trauma. There are decisions or conditions that have brought that on. that have brought the reaction to that trauma on. That's what you're experiencing. It doesn't need a label. What needs to be evaluated and assessed is all that you've gone through, and then changes need to be made, and help and support needs to be provided so that you can experience a better set of circumstances that will help you to begin to be able to heal. And so we have to understand that being Black in white America, and I hate to say this, it means that we cannot trust anyone, that we don't have any allies. And many times we cannot trust people who look like us. So I'm going to turn my camera off for just a moment, because I need to go use the restroom for a second. But go ahead, Shauna, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to go backwards to Jessica talking about how you felt as a mom, when the proposed diagnosis was presented to you about your baby.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've had to learn on this journey, having a child that has a different ability,
Right.
I had to learn how to reframe my speech, especially around him, because in my home, we center joy, we center brilliance in our children.
Yeah.
And hearing all the time about having a disability cognitively, that impacts you. And so people are not problems to be fixed.
Right.
Okay. However, the way that different abilities are framed and what it does to us as parents, that internal trauma and psychological injury that we feel trying to navigate this diagnosis or this information that we received, we have to be cognizant and careful of our speech and how we talk to our children and how we choose to frame it. Because just because they said one thing doesn't mean that we have to frame it that way. And so when I talk to my son and I look at what he can do, because again, I also, in my dismantling anti-Blackness journey and living in this white supremacist culture that we live in, I've had to be cognizant of how I talk to myself about his needs, how I talk to him about his needs, and how I communicate to other people his needs in his presence and outside of his presence.
Right.
Because I already know, just like what Dante is saying, that we inflict it upon ourselves and others. I don't need my child to go out already having to live in this society thinking, well, dang, my mom said this, my teacher said this was said in the IEP. And so again, I try to reframe disability to different abilities, and I would focus on the things that he could do. Initially, when we got home and had to live with our new normal, it was, dang, look at all the things that he can't do. And that was my internal conversation. But over time, I had to reframe it, because I'm like, I can't go with this deficit model. Let's look at all the things he can do. Let me uplift and highlight those things. And so parents that are dealing with these situations, the call to action and the tool and the resource that I want to call forth is to be careful about how you frame what your child is able to do. And then that last thing about the Black bourgeois class, I watched a video the other day on social media, and I didn't get the people's names, but it was this Indian gentleman from India that was setting these two brothers straight. He thought that it was completely ludicrous that they were gloating and excited or sharing gleefully about their decision to not date Black women. Wow. And he was like, there's no other group of people that I've ever heard celebrate not wanting to date women that they actually came from. And those gentlemen, normally he and I can't remember their names, but he and Kiki, and they were silent. They were silent as that man sat down and read them the ludicrous nature of what they were actually saying. When they heard him say how silly they sounded, they were absolutely silent. And so again, they live in delusion, they live in misery, and they have a sham mindset that they've created for themselves. Stepping back. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Well, I was just saying that we too have adopted. We have adopted everything about it. So again, we are collaborators with these people in our own genocide and our own demise. Jessica, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank Shauna for just reaffirming me as a parent, because and also reassuring me that I'm on the right path, right? I have to speak life into my son. I cannot look at him, and I said this to his father, we cannot look at him from a deficit base. This little boy is brilliant, right? Even in every sense of the word about how he's showing up. And I want to
can we amplify that one point though, Jess?
Yeah.
You're not doing this on a team as a teammate. The father is operating off the psychology of white supremacy too, where he's validating white is right. Here's what, if he's judging your son against a set of white norms and standards, here's what I want to see my 2-year-old doing. Here's how I want to see my 2-year-old behaving. Here's how I want to see my 2-year-old speaking by 2. These are my expectations. And so now, since my child is not functioning in that way, I'm going to take them to a doctor that is supposed to specialize in development. Meanwhile, the doctor, who's the expert in development, go with me, is saying that the child who was playing with the bubbles that they were given by the doctor, because the child turned their attention to another toy. Now, this is the expert.
Right.
There's something wrong with the child.
Right.
So you're working, you've got both the doctor in the institution as well as the other parent.
Yeah.
Operating off the psychology of white supremacy, anti-Blackness,
right.
which is, and they're highlighting this idea of Black deficiency or Black inadequacy that's not been realized at all, because your son, again, is 2. And so the dad that has not done his work to examine his own internalized anti-Blackness, his own internalized assimilation and affinity towards whiteness and white supremacy, he's now working against you.
Co-signing it. Yep. Yeah. And that's why it's isolating when you're on this journey of unpacking your, and reimagining how we parent and love each other. It's isolating, right? And I even have had conversations with other people who I've had to go to just advise me to keep doing what you're doing, right?
That's right.
And it's hard, right? Because I would ideally like for me and the other parent to be on the same page, because this is only one example of something that's going to be a challenge that we have to get through, right? He's a Black boy. We have a Black daughter, and there are several instances where I'm having to be the one to voice where the anti-Blackness is coming in, and the other parent not seeing it. Right.
That's right.
And I appreciate you, Dante, for saying it so very eloquently. He is on his own healing journey, and hopefully he will get there, because they're going to need both of us to be on one accord to help them deal with these challenges, right? But in the event that he doesn't, my control is my home and my environment and what I pour into these children. And so for Shannon, I really appreciate you again. The strength base. That is all I'm going to parent off of. The strength of a child, knowing in my children, and also continuing to create an environment of joy and love, and not be so rigid on our children. I think
that's right.
We out of our own not knowing, some of us, again, the lack of support in this, we get rigid. We get to the point where we start chastising and questioning our children's.
And it's the worst thing you can do. The worst thing you can do. People speak to this idea about me sometimes, and I don't necessarily see myself in these ways, but they speak to this boldness that I have, this courage, this confidence that I have. And I'm grateful that people see those qualities in me, but all I can say is I believe that what they're speaking to is what my mother instilled into me and what she poured into me. My mother, I woke up to Post-it notes on the mirror every day that said, good morning and hello to my beautiful and wonderfully made sons. My beautiful and wonderfully made sons. My mom did so much to inspire confidence, to pour into me, to pour into us. And it had nothing to do with how well or not well I didn't do in white institutions or at school. It had to do from a love, a solid, pure, genuine, authentic love that my mom just showered upon me. And I will forever be grateful to her, because I believe and feel that way about other human beings. I believe we all deserve love. We all deserve to be treated well. We do not deserve to be under attack by anyone or anything at all, ever. right? But that is where I believe parents have to live and need to live always through a lot of reinforcement, a lot of grace. There was a lot of grace, although when my mom met her threshold of we're out of line, she put us back in line. Okay. But the other piece too that I want to try and kind of take us to the other direction. There's this book, right? And it's called The Peculiar Institution and the Making of Modern Psychiatry. We have to understand that the United States of America, it's got a black man on the face, right? That the United States of America is only a few hundred years old. Our institutions are only a few hundred years old. That's true for our educational, academic institutions, all of that. So when we think about and we talk about the development of the white Western world's view on psychiatry and or their developing the discipline of psychiatry, we have to put this into a factual historical perspective that one, that institution of behavioral health or mental health only evolved in the mid 1800s. Okay, and so you have white people putting together their ideas and agreeing upon what behavioral standards are normal, what behavioral standards are abnormal, all according to their cultural norms and values and standards. And so they're able to project not just upon themselves, but where others are concerned, who's normal and who isn't. And so you have an entire discipline of the psychological and psychiatric sciences that has been made up. So when we're talking about autism, when we're talking about neurodivergency, when we're talking about attention deficit, we're talking about behavioral conditions that have been made up for the purposes of disorganizing people, of organizing people into disorganization, and for the purposes of organizing people as it pertains to the politics of normalcy. Who's normal and who's not, and how can we economize it? How can we put these people into these different decisions, into these different conditions, into these different situations in terms of how they think about themselves, how other people think about them, and how can that serve our culture in terms of creating a class of people that we deem as normal, as adequate, as competent, versus those who don't. And then who are those that are paranoid? Who are those that lack attention, that are incapable of paying attention for the amount of time that we say they should be able to pay attention for, right? And then not only do we diagnose them and have them remain dependent upon a system that is really being set up to destroy them for that person's demise. But now we have the industry of pharmacology that we can make a referral that this person needs not one medicine, 2, 3, 4. This is a foolproof system. And we have to understand from a realistic, from a factual standpoint, this is not Dante King's opinion. This is the truth. And so if you read this book, it talks about how there were different asylums that were set up and they were segregated. There was one for Black people and then one for the normal people, white people, right? But it really details how they begin to use Black people. And I believe this is probably part of the reason why Black people don't like to go to therapy today, because I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. Black people way back when understood that white people were making things up about them to pathologize them and put them into very dangerous situations. It's only us New Age Blacks that for some reason have accepted the framework of psychiatry and psychology as though like it's the be all end all in the ways that we should be looking at and defining human behavior. That said, it is important to recognize and to understand that these behavioral health sciences were literally created to pathologize and denigrate and create rationales and justifications to be able to dehumanize Black people. And so that's one of the things that this book details. And so we have to, there's so much here. Get this book. And then there's also a book called Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington, where she talks about how different scientific and academic philosophies were developed and created to pathologize Black people. And it's so interesting, even as I'm saying this today, right? It was only 54 years ago where white people were saying that someone like me, who is same gender loving because I am attracted to men, that gay people were mental illness. So we have to understand the historical framework of pathologizing people based upon white ideological norms and values and the ideological framework of deviance. Whoever white people consider to be deviant in this society, and that's based on skin color, it's based on mannerisms, behavior, whatever. Those are the people that they have targeted to be able to label as less than normal, and have created economic and political infrastructures or economic and political systems to further the normalcy of these very toxic and genocidal functions, realities. Yes.
I just want to give, I love receipts, and just to stamp what you just said, anybody on this call or watching this call at a later date, go Google APA apology. APA apology. The APA apology to people of color for APA's role in promoting, perpetuating, and failing to challenge racism, racial discrimination, and human hierarchy in the United States. It's a resolution they adopted October 29th, 2021, and it's still up. They haven't taken it down, so they haven't shrunk from it. But when I was studying for a talk, and when I came across that APA apology, it floored me, and it stopped me directly in my tracks, and it is confirming everything that you just said, Stephanie.
That's right. And so we have to ask ourselves, Shauna, right, and Jessica, what will they be apologizing for 100 years from now? Oh, we were wrong about autism.
Yes.
We were wrong. We have to understand these are practices. This is a practice of medicine, right? I joke all the time how they said you should take a bare aspirin every day because, it'll slow down kind of heart attacks and, make the heart function better. It came out 20 years later. Oh, no, that's not the case. You should stop taking it because it's going to cause, all of this damage to your body. We were wrong. Same with alcohol. You should have a glass of red wine just once every day. It's going to do wonders for your heart function. Oh, we were wrong. Actually, alcohol causes cancer. We want everyone to stop having a drink. This is how this works, people. But we have been trained to be so gullible. And as I stated earlier, we have a misplaced trust in American institutions because we've been programmed that these institutions are legitimate, and that the people occupying positions inside of these institutions, from the principal to the vice principal to the teacher, that these people somehow are in a legitimate officialized positions that we should trust. We should trust their expertise. And so when we are approached by the teacher about our child acting out or not doing well, we are programmed to believe them and to believe our child not as much. And especially if it's a Black child. And many times we're already operating on off of our own perversions about Black children. Well, he's bad, she's bad. You're saying that. You've allowed other people to say about your children. And so now that mindset, that thinking about your child or the child is so programmed in that you're primed for a predator to come to you and tell you that something's wrong with your child. You're primed because you've already bought into the psychology of inadequacy where your child is concerned. And most of us have already bought into that psychology of inadequacy where our own selves are concerned. So we are primed for predators to come and give us feedback about ourselves and about our children. You better wake up and get to know who you are, set boundaries, and start questioning and pushing back against everything and everyone in this society. Everyone in this society is programmed to act in bad faith where Black people are concerned.
Oh, you said it. And, you know, also too, it's like we're trusting in a culture of predators, rapists, and
Come on, Jessica.
no,
Jessica, you.
when we start thinking about it, this is that culture that they're come from. So how are we still upholding this high moral standard when their culture is of this? Our culture is not of that. Our ancestral practices are not of that. And we needed to tap back into that in some sense. We are community people. We are loving. We provide grace for each other. And somewhere down the line, as you said, Dante, we started to believe in these practices, even though our ancestors have told us don't do this. There was a diagnosing that they were trying to give enslaved people who wanted to be free.
Drapetomania. Drapetomania. That same doctor, too, also created the science of Diaesthesia Ethiopica. That was Dr. Samuel Cartwright. And he said that it was scientific that Black people are dishonest and lazy. Yes. Yes.
That's who we're still in today's day and age, still trusting. Yeah.
Yes, you had me laughing over here. I said, no, she did not just pull a Dr. Amos Wilson, because in that speech by Dr. Amos Wilson, he says, you know, there's some of us that say, I want my children to be just like them. And he says, what are you talking about? So you want your children to be rapists, robbers, murderers? Oh, Jessica.
Complex, no sense of community. That's who we're trusting to tell us about our children and our people, right? And you just hit it on the head. Yeah, they're 54 years ago. They also were saying women who menstruated were considered to be, a mental illness. So why? The so-called quote unquote science that they use to justify does not match their explanation on a lot of things. And I think we have to continue to challenge, even like you said, it's a practice. Science is a practice. They're testing theories and shit. They don't actually know how these things actually work. So,
but not only that, they're not even meant to work for the safety and sanity and health of people. We have to understand that everything that happens in this culture, that has happened in this culture, has been structured upon a foundation of inhumanity. Right. And so everything functions off of inhumanity. It is transactional by nature.
Yeah.
It's not meant for the health, the benefit, or well-being of the individual or collective group. That's even true where white people are concerned. And so we have to then understand that the way that you then begin to deal with people is not through addressing their needs to ensure that they are well and taken care of, but it's through labeling them. And if you do right by us, if you do right by our institutional, cultural, ideological standards and frameworks, we'll label you in the affirmative, and you'll be a good, respectable person. But if you do not adhere to these standards, if you do not measure up, we're going to measure you in the negative.
Right.
Right? And so we have to understand how this is working at both the local level and the communal level. I did want to get to another clip where Dr. Frances Cress Welsing is talking about the color confrontation, her Cress color confrontation theory. And she's talking about the way in which white people have created the behavioral framework of white supremacy, because they understand that not only are they inadequate, but they are genetically recessive. And so the way for them to maintain their existence and survival is through targeting other groups that are considered non-white, and then going around the world and really participating in genocidal efforts. But she also talks about the psychology of colorism and how it functions even in the Black community. So I think that this is prime for this discussion. So I am going to play a little bit of it. I know, Jessica, you have to go. Were there any last thoughts that you wanted to offer?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. It's the dehumanization of us all, right? Like all of these systems are in place to dehumanize people. I do also see and hear how white families are treated in this transactional nature, and how they even their children are dehumanized. They've been pumped with a lot of medication.
Sure.
They're quick to diagnose them. I had an encounter with a parent of a client who stated that, he's trying to get his son off of all these meds that they gave him. They gave him 9 medications, and he didn't need that. And his son is a zombie. And so he's been fighting with the psychiatrist on getting his son off, right? So it impacts all of us. There's levels to it, but this culture is very toxic in how we handle and care for human beings.
Yes, it is. So 2 other books, I'm kind of reaching out of my way. I've got all these books around me. I just pick them up sometimes and go to just different sections that have inspired me. But this other book by Tanya Katari Hernandez, Racial Innocence, Unmasking Latino Anti-Black Bias and the Struggle for Equality. So again, Racial Innocence by Tanya Katari Hernandez. She's a law professor. Understanding Latino Anti-Black Bias and the Struggle for Equality. And then Dr. Amos Wilson, who I reference all the time, always. This is a pretty thick book. It's a huge book. But Black Power, the Blueprint for Black Power, a moral, political, and economic imperative for the 21st century. Dr. Amos Wilson, he's no longer with us, but he was a profound man who has influenced and shaped the way that I come to thinking about and understanding this reality that we find ourselves in the world at large. I want to give a special shout out to my sister, Irella Blackwood, who I see tuning in. Jessica and I know her personally. She's one of our dear sisters and friends. Just want to say I love you, we love you, and we hope all is well. Sean, did you want to say anything before I show this clip?
Well said. I'm always growing, I'm always learning, and I'm always grateful for these spaces. And I'm grateful for the grace. I want to plug the book again. One of the things that you said is, excuse me, because I'm reaching around for books. I think that I want to encourage our friends and our family, not only to buy your book, but to buy books again. Buy books again. We saw how easy websites can be wiped and how dependent we've become on the digital form of literature. However, I think when you can and when you're able, grab that book, have your library. One of my greatest memories is walking into my grandparents' house and seeing a bookshelf full of books, and there was no TV in the living room. No disrespect to anybody that's watching TV or you own digital devices right now, but it was common to go to my grandparents' house and to grab a book and to sit on the couch and just read. And one of the things that I think that our society has done, and we've seen it with the oligarchs, is to make us so tech dependent that the moment that they want to wipe something, a whole catalog of material away to keep us further in the dark and in further ignorance, is to do just that. And so big ups to all the book readers, the book buyers. Don't stop buying books because it may be all we have at some point in time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for letting me share, y'all. I appreciate you and just the love. And again, I just encourage you, parents who are listening, people who are listening, just really pour into ourselves and our community at this point. Like I just can't stress that enough. And I know for me, I'm learning the compassion that I have for us. I can be hard sometimes too, but I also have tremendous compassion because we are literally fighting a monster. We're fighting evilness, to be honest. Let me just say it real. We are fighting evilness, and sometimes we have to do that in isolation. And it's not good. It can be harmful, but the again, the beauty of this, and I agree with Shauna, please buy the book. Please attend any of Dante's events, fellowship, all of that, because it has tremendously changed my life. And I'm going to go as far as saying life-saving. You know, he saved my children's upbringing, right? He saved me as well, because there's been moments where I'm trying to battle this system, and it has taken a toll on me emotionally, right? And now that my eyes are open, as Shauna said, the exposure, I can't go back. And I also now can navigate very clearly in knowing what it is, right? So I just appreciate you, Dante, and I appreciate all the love. And Shauna, thank you so much again for the reassurance and your beauty and your grace. I love both of y'all. So thank
I
you.
love you too, Jessica. I really do. And I mean, again, you just have me almost going to tears over here with what you're saying. And we talk all the time. So, you know how I feel and you know how I am. But I thank you. And I just want to re-emphasize when you said, you led with, we have to understand basically that we're under attack and that we're fighting an enemy. And so the enemy, though, that we're fighting is the culture and the psychology, the psychosocial programming of anti-Blackness, the psychosocial and the sociocultural programming of whiteness and white supremacy. Those are the enemies, and they are being disseminated through every institution, every American institution, because this programming does not miss anyone. It has not missed anyone. And so we always have to be navigating American society in this country and really the world, understanding that people have been programmed to be colorist, that they have been programmed to value whiteness and people who are phenotypically, genetically recessive, and that they have been programmed to hate and to see in a very derogatory manner, people who have melanin and people who are defined and perceived as Black. So we absolutely are under attack. And I just want to thank you, my dear, good, beautiful sister. I love and adore you. So thank you for taking time to be with us today and to be able to also share and center your experience and the experience of our young king, who is beautiful, by the way. She has a beautiful son and daughter. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I love you all.
Love you, sis. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Woo! This has been one incredible discussion. Okay, so I would be remiss if I did not share this video. And again, this is Dr. Frances Cress Welsing talking about the psychology of color, the psychology of colorism. And this is in the mid-1970s. She's actually going to be speaking to the fact that she got fired from Howard University for writing this paper. Back in 1975, she was terminated for writing the Cress color, the Cress color confrontation theory, the Cress color confrontation theory. Here we go. You see that? My brain is shutting down. I'm tired. But all right, here we are.
Dr. Frances Welsing, a well-known psychiatrist whose psychiatric theories and views on a number of topical issues have had a significant impact on Afro-Americans. She is the author of the Cress theory of color confrontation. And Melvin Van Peebles, director and producer of various stage plays and movies. He is the author of a newly published book entitled The True American. Our first guest is Dr. Frances Welsing. Joining me in the questioning is Richard Prince from the Washington Post. Mr. Prince has the first question.
Yes, Dr. Welsing, it's been about a year ago since you were dismissed from Howard University. And at the time, I recall you charged that your Cress theory, which in brief holds that whites are inferior to blacks because of the lack of melanin, was responsible for that dismissal. And I'm wondering whether you still believe that and what proof you have of that.
Well, Dick, I do believe it. I was dismissed from Howard, fired from Howard in June 1975. In November 1974, while still at Howard, I heard a rumor that I was going to be blocked from promotion and tenure because of my views, not because of my academic work. And I went immediately to the Dean of the College of Medicine, Dr. Marion Mann, and I asked him, I said, Dr. Mann, I hear that I am going to be blocked from promotion and tenure because of my views. And Dr. Mann responded, to be frank with you, Dr. Welsing, this paper that you wrote, and I said, the Cress theory of color confrontation, he said, yes. He went on to say that it did not make sense for me to say that white people were envious of black people because white people lack skin pigmentation. And we went on from that point. But let me make one correction. My theory does not say that whites are inferior to blacks. I don't say that. I say that whites feel that they are inferior. because they cannot produce skin pigmentation and because their status as, I say, a variant of albinism is genetic recessive to blacks, and they can be genetically annihilated by non-white people, that this is what causes that sense of inadequacy, that they have built a total behavioral system that is a compensation. White supremacy is a compensation for a sense of white genetic inadequacy.
I see. One other follow-up on that, and that is what background in genetics do you have to enable you to document that theory?
Well, I'm a medical doctor, and all medical doctors receive or take courses in genetics. And this is very, very basic genetics. And it not only is very basic genetics, this is common lay knowledge. And we hear it, the dominance, the genetic dominance of black over white is heard in the expression, one drop of black blood makes you black. In other words, if you were to relate to a white female, the product of that relationship would be an individual that is identifiable as what is called non-white. They would have something, I mean, the curliness of the hair, the darkness of the skin would make the child look more like you than like the mother.
I see.
Dr. Welsing, your theory to me seems to infer some innate behavior on the part of a human being because they are, quote, black or white. Would you agree or disagree that the terms black and white are not genetic definitions? And if they are not genetic definitions, then how could your theory be true?
Well, wait a minute. When you say genetic definitions, I'm not quite sure what you say, but for the sake of time, the factors that determine whether we're going to have skin pigmentation or whether we lack skin pigmentation is based on genes. In other words, you have genes that determine the quantity of melanin pigment that is going to be produced in your skin, in your eyes, and your hair. If you have a gene, a mutation towards an inability to produce that pigment, that is also genetically determined. And that is at least within the context of the Western world or the white supremacy culture, the dominant classification of people, not as determined by Francis Welsing, but as determined by white people themselves, is your classification. Either you are white or you are classified as non-white. This is on your birth certificate. This is on every paper of identification that you have. And this focus on skin coloration, I maintain, is based on the awareness on the people who are now in power, that they are a minority. The white group represents a minority in the world population. And the color focus is something that is a psychological, I say a psychological necessity based on a genetic reality. So I don't know if this gets to your question. Now, any other thing that one might say that results from the absence of pigment, I mean, that's another discussion. I don't know whether you want to go into that.
Well, following that logic, then would it not be accurate to say that there would be a difference psychologically in light-skinned blacks from dark-skinned blacks?
Well, psychologically, yes, and I think that we are all aware of that. Under white supremacy, the conditioning has been the closer you are to white, the more acceptable you are. So that, for example, all of us learned as we were growing up in the black community, if you are black, stay back. If you are brown, stick around. If you are yellow, you're mellow. And if you're white, you're right. And the appreciation of an individual, even within the black group itself, was very often based on the relative absence of skin pigmentation. And even within families, children thought that they were ugly if they were darker. And families, parents have said that to children. Even now, people want to know when a baby is just born in the hospital, some of the first questions that are asked by the black parents about the child or the black family members, is it light skin and does it have straight hair? To know how much value we're going to put on this new baby. Because within the framework of the culture in which we live, the closer you are to white, the more you're considered beautiful, and perhaps under some circumstances, the more opportunities you will have.
All right. So we must understand that we are talking about a value system. And it is a value system that has been developed based on a psychological programming that has been forced into us, that we have been inflicted with, that has been injected into our psychology, that has established and sanctioned that people who possess an inability to lack skin pigmentation, melanin, are somehow superior. And because we exist under their domination, because we exist under a cultural, societal, and institutional framework that legitimizes and epitomizes everything that these folks have determined make up our culture, we then use those standards and norms to not only measure our own value and self-worth, but to then determine and judge the value and or lack thereof of other people, and particularly the psychology of anti-Blackness that we detest, not people that we just perceive as Black, but anything that we perceive as being associated with Black people. And you can just listen to people talk in their opinions or reactions. Let's say whenever there's recognition that something is Black owned, that connotation is not a favorable connotation. And even though right now in this moment, there are some people that have been able to turn or shift around that narrative where we say, oh, wow, this is a Black-owned business, we should frequent it, we should support it. That has not always been the favorable view, or that has not always been the common view or the commercial view. Anything associated with Black-owned, don't shop there. You know the quality is not going to be what it is at the other store. Well, you know how those Black people are. And this has come from other Black people. Shoot, earlier on in my life, I was saying things like this because I didn't understand and recognize the deep psychological affliction of anti-Blackness as a psychological function, as a sociocultural function. And so that is what Dr. Welsing is speaking to about the value system, the politics of race, and how that value system informs the political landscape of race, how it informs the economic landscape of race and racism in white America. Shauna, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I love Dr. Welsing, and you were the person that made me begin to listen to her on YouTube. And what I saw was, going back to the protecting Black children, using her theory, it would be more of a fear-based system that views Black children not as children, which I've already stated, but as threats to be neutralized. So
Yes.
with that lens, it's important for us as parents to be aware. If her theory, if there's truth to her theory, depending on, folks believe what they want to believe. I believe that there's truth to it. We understand why our children's behavior are pathologized, right? But other kids' behavior, oh, they're just spirited. Our kids are problems. Their kids just being kids, right? And it just seems like the people that we've trusted without question have set up systems to sabotage us, to neutralize us, out of using the backdrop of her theory to prevent us from thriving out of a fear of them being annihilated.
I'm just really dealing with that because that is the end result. That is the end result. And if you go back, for example, to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, The Other America, this is in 1967. You can find a transcript online. You can also see him giving this speech, I believe at Stanford in 1967. It's on YouTube. But he's saying the ultimate logic of racism is genocide. Racism's ultimate logic is genocide. So when you have all of these things happening, which are forms of both psychological, cultural, institutional warfare, when you have this type of warfare aimed at people, that denigrates their humanity, that denigrates their value in the world and society, that denigrates their value in a culture unless they align their humanity with the cultural norms and standards. But even when they do, there's still something wrong to be found out. But when we understand this and how these things are functioning and operating, not just for the benefit of white people and to the lack thereof of us, but when we understand that the end goal is to ensure the destruction of African people, the destruction of Black people, then we can begin to function within this society, within this cultural context, appropriately, where we have our guards up, where we're not easily persuaded to accept feedback from the teacher, to accept the doctor's expertise, to accept everyone in society has been trained to operate in bad faith where Black people are concerned. I will continue to say that. I'm going to pull up right now for you. Give me 1 second. Let me just see. Dr. Bobby Wright. And I write this in my book. I'm just going to read another passage. Let me just see. So here we go. This is a passage from my book, Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness. Please go out and support the book if you have not gotten it. You can see it right here. It's right here. That's right, Shauna. Thank you so much for holding up a copy. But this is what I write in my book, and this is on page 32, actually. So it's right within the front of the book. And we have to understand that all of us are programmed to fit inside of everything that I'm saying in this book, that we're all affected by it. So racism functions sometimes loud, other times silent. Sometimes it is hidden, other times it is obvious. What it always is deliberate and meant to benefit whites. Racism must be the norm if Black people are to continually be degraded and destroyed, which is the ultimate goal. If it were merely personal, something on a micro scale, whole institutions would not be needed to perpetuate it. It is about the collective. The scale is a macro one. It is about psychopathy, sociopathy, complete destruction. My work does not exist in isolation. I was influenced by others. I owe it to them to include how they influenced me. In 1975, Dr. Bobby Wright, a psychologist, wrote an essay entitled The Psychopathic Racial Personality. In it, he states the following: in their relationship with the Black race, whites are psychopaths, and their behavior represents an underlying biologically transmitted proclivity with roots deep in their evolutionary history. The psychopath is an individual who is constantly in conflict with other persons or groups. He is unable to experience guilt, is completely selfish and callous, and has a total disregard for the rights of others. One of the best methods that can be used to measure the psychopathic traits of the white race is observing and analyzing their universal overt behaviors and attitudes towards Black people. Dr. Wright discusses white people's obsession with Black people, their need to maintain power and control over us. He states, psychopaths simply ignore the concept of right and wrong. By ignoring this trait in the white race, the lack of ethical and moral development, Black people have made and are still making a tragic mistake in basing the worldwide Black liberation movement on moral suasion. It is pathological for Black people to keep attempting to use moral suasion on a people who have no morality, where race is the variable. And so we must understand that the destruction of Black people is morally acceptable to white people. That is why they begin with the institution of enslaving people, the institution of of sexually assaulting people, the institution of prostitution, which leads to the building the gross domestic product of what we now call the United States of America. We have to understand that these ways, these proclivities, these inhumane ways of functioning sit at the foundation in the core and are rooted within the construct of white morality, of white decency. These are things that white people have done to Black people with grave intention in the affirmative. So we have to understand then that as the relationship formed in terms of a group of people who can't produce melanin, adopting a color concept to define themselves, to define their humanity, that they formed in ways where they begin to function as psychopaths, where people who are considered African are concerned, people who produce melanin. And so if this is true, one of the things I begin to think about is that if this is true for white people, but I'm also able to look out in society and see that we're treated in the same ways by Asians, by Hispanic, by Latinx people, by Middle Eastern people, by Filipinos, we're treated this way by everyone in this society. But we're also experiencing anti-Blackness where Black people are concerned. It led me to understand and begin to say, if white people have been programmed and evolved to be psychopathic where Black people are concerned, guess what this means? Guess what I, Dante King, am observing across all aspects and within all people in our society, that they too have been trained and programmed to be psychopathic where Black people are concerned. And that is true for me as well. I am not exempt. So Shauna, I want to bring you in for some last thoughts about this, and then we're going to close out.
Last thoughts, you're 100% correct. Dr. Bobby Wright, somebody else that you put me on to, and the idea of menticide, the process by which the minds of Black people are programmed to serve white supremacy while believing they're acting in their own best interest. And so when you say the revelation came that, wait a minute, if this is behavior that's being observed by white people and we're seeing it with our Asian communities, our Latino, Latina, Latinx communities, and even ourselves, where did the socialization in it come from? And looking at the lens of Dr. Westling and Dr. Bobby Wright, going back to our school system, back to the children, which is why it's important for us to teach our children our history, because being taught, coming up in a school district that teaches and centers a Eurocentric history above all other histories, where our behavior is then criminalized, our brilliance is mislabeled. It's all part of the ideology of menticide. And so it conditions us to mistrust ourselves and to accept inferiority as normal, because no one ever came to me and said, Shauna, you're less than. I've never been taught that outright, but it's been implied and understood based on what's been presented to me. And so the socialization has been so subtle.
Yes.
You in that thing before you realize you're in that thing. And so that is why conversations like this, works like this, and taking time and spending time and talking about these issues, the society that we live in, without fear. Because many years ago, I know everybody's been talking about it, but where I am in the governmental space, you didn't say racism at work. You didn't say anti-Black racism. There were taboo words in the public sector that you just did not say. But in this day and time, depending on where you live, depending on how progressive the organization that you're in is, you very well may be expected to speak to those things and have courageous conversations. If we're going to empower, if we're going to get to truth, healing, and reconciliation, you got to have these conversations, right? And so I just wanted to bring it out that it goes back to our education. And you come out of school, you end up in the workforce, and now you have a society of folks that all think alike, that as it relates to race, and all feel the same way, even though they haven't been explicitly told these things. They understand them to be true, even though we know that it's simply an ideology and a belief system.
That's absolutely right. And I love you, my beautiful sister. Thank you so much for breaking that down and closing us out with it. And I just want to build upon that thought for just a quick second. And so, in Tashana's point, Asian people are socialized to and do serve white supremacy and whiteness. And they understand their proximity. Most don't, but some do understand their proximity to whiteness and white people. But this is also true for people who are other groups of people who are identified and individuals who are identified as non-white in this society, that they've been programmed to adhere to and to worship and subscribe to the ideological and psychological framework of whiteness and white supremacy. And that's true for Black people as well. These groups have also been programmed to be inherently anti-Black. And it doesn't matter whether they agree with that statement or deny it, or whatever. Pay attention to what people are doing rather than what they are saying, because the denial comes through action, not in what people say. So I want to give a few shout outs to my beautiful sister, Shauna Lewis, and my beautiful sister, Jessica Brown, who sat with me today and who really made today possible. This discussion has been more than fruitful, and I'm just so grateful and honored to be surrounded by people who share a similar understanding and who are on a journey of recovery from anti-Blackness and white supremacy. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in, who joined in. I see some people online. People have been hitting me up on my cell phone. So I do plan to do this again. We do plan to do this again. I'm thinking about May 12th for the next discussion. So Shauna, if you're available, I'd love to have you back. But we're going to be talking about Black love and life and white supremacy's influence on Black love and life and our ability to have healthy, sustainable, quality relationships existing within the cultural and societal framework of white supremacy. So that'll be a very interesting discussion too. I don't think there's anything. Oh, one other thing. Go to DanteKing.com. April 19th, we will be resuming, I think for the third time, around, it's a free online live book club that I'm hosting to discuss the book, Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, my newest book. So if you want to be with us online while we discuss that book and review the chapter questions, and you have questions for me that you'd like to get answered, go to DanteKing.com, go to the events page, register for the free book club, and you can join us on April 19th. And I think we'll also be meeting again on May 2nd. So that's it. Thank y'all for joining us today. Love y'all. And we will see you next